Hello, hello. This is new episode of KSM podcast, Growing Business Online with Christina. And today I have my special guest, but I'm honored to have podcasting queen and one of the pioneer of podcasting, Annemarie Cross. Annemarie, welcome to new episode of KSM podcast.
Oh, my pleasure. And it's such an honor to be here with you today, Christina.
Thank you so much. And I'm super excited having you today. So I know that I met you, let's say, for now, 10 years ago in online space through LinkedIn. And we connected in that time. And it's such a long time. And now, can you tell us a little bit about you? Who you are, what you do, and where are you based?
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. So when we met many years ago, I was transitioning out of the career industry and now, of course, working with entrepreneurs and coaches with their brand and podcast strategy. But when we first met, I was leveraging podcasting within the career space. And so I started podcasting back in 2008. Back when, for many of us who can remember then, that was when the global financial crisis hit. And a colleague and I were very saddened by all of the messages across all mainstream media. And at that time, it was newspaper, it was television and radio. Those were the main streams of media. And so podcasting really wasn't a thing back then. But we said, we need to be the voice of hope and inspiration for job seekers. We knew things were difficult. We knew things were tough, but we knew things were not hopeless and people needed to change their approach to job search. And so we had some skills and knowledge and experience to share. We had no idea what we were doing, but our message and our vision and our willingness to want to support, people who were now without a job around the world really led us forward. So we started our podcast. We did that for 2 years and met some incredible people, helped many people around the globe. In fact, it really blew us away, the audience that we started to connect with and the community that we built. But one of the reasons that we stopped was my co-host started to transition more and get more interested in social media. And I started working and wanting to work more with service-based businesses. But one of the things we did struggle with, and I'll be honest here, is we struggled to monetize our podcast. And as you, a podcast host, knows, it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of commitment and dedication to produce these podcasts. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get a return on the time that we had invested. So we went our separate ways. I continue to podcast, still do today. In fact, I have many podcasts that I host and produce. Not that I'm saying to other people for you to do that. Have one really good one. I just love that medium. And because of my love for podcasting, people started to notice. And I made all of the mistakes and many, many more. And of course, often through learning and trying things out, seeing what doesn't work, tweaking and changing, have now full circle come around. And that's now what I teach others so that they don't have to make the same mistakes that I have over the years, but really launch a podcast for a highly niched audience so that they can make an impact, one podcast, one message at a time, and build a community of ideal clients that they can then nurture listeners into leads. So I really fell into it by accident, more for a need. It was a medium that I could see could help us share a message. And we did that. And that's how I've continued to leverage podcasting today.
Yeah, that's really nice. And can you tell us a little bit, you mentioned that, but about your background? Did you work in corporate space and started podcasting, as you said, by accident? But sometimes I think that we are followed by something, maybe that podcast is really new, your real trip and way to move forward in your business and life, I mean.
Yeah, great question. You know, if I look back to what I was doing prior, I did work in corporate for many years. Well, when I say many years, for years before I had my family. And so I worked, my background was actually in accounting and bookkeeping and office management. And I often worked for smaller businesses, which meant that I was involved in a lot of different things and was working directly with CEOs and managing directors and boards of businesses. In fact, when I was in my late teens, I helped a company. I came from New Zealand. I helped a New Zealand company, go to the New Zealand Stock Exchange. So I had experience in that too. I was just a sponge. I learned so much in my early years. But then when I had my first daughter, my first child, I decided to leave the workforce. And it wasn't until she was about 18 months and I was pregnant with my second child, I started to get a little bit of itchy feet, you know, that saying. And my husband said, if we get you a computer, do you think you could do something from home? And then the rest is history. I continued night school, you know, going to do certifications, but I studied in the area of accounting because I wanted to get my diploma and then a degree in accounting. But I got to the law part and I started to get a little bit that this isn't me. So I completely shifted and started doing studies in the area of human resources. People always fascinated me. And so I started to do human resources, got some diplomas in that, you know, business management, human resources, and then transitioned even further, specialized even further in the area of careers, specifically how to support people in finding a job that they loved. And then also, I specialized in workplace relations and particularly grief and loss of losing a job. And so that really fueled me, going back to the story of why I wanted to start that podcast, to be that hope and inspiration, because a lot of the things that I'd learned and that I had applied and, you know, through my experience, really, there was such a need to share that message. And that's really where I transitioned. It was kind of following a line of study, enjoying that, and then transitioning, you know, honing in on that. And of course, I worked in the career industry for well over 15 years. And then I started working more with consultants, people who had hit the glass ceiling in their career and then decided, I'm going to start my own business. But then they realized, oh, we don't need to do this thing called marketing in our business. How do we do that? Oh, Annemarie's been doing a good job. She's talked about branding and that for a while. I wonder if she can help us. And then I had so much fun working with these entrepreneurs, and I realized there was a huge market in that as well. And if they didn't market themselves correctly, a lot of the issues that they faced in the career industry, like negotiating a salary, positioning yourself, you know, and doing all of that and to climb the career corporate ladder, so to speak, they would face the same issues: how to find the right clients, how to negotiate proposals and contracts, how to charge what you're worth and get it. So I decided to focus on that. So a lot of the things that I learned for myself as I was growing and developing my own business, I realized there was a huge need for others as well. And I just love teaching, love sharing, love empowering others to recognize their inner brilliance and what's possible for them, and then help them map out a step to be able to achieve that.
Oh, this is so lovely. This is amazing. And I have to say, I must say to you that when I came to the Australian market, and the first person who I started listening Australian English, first person were you, because and it was because as you started 2008 as a pioneer in podcasting, and for me it was such a great experience, you know, because I come from Europe, from Serbia. English is my second language, and to be honest, you open many connections in Australia, and I was listening to podcasting webinars, and with many guest speakers in your podcast from US, and after 10 years, just imagine how this is huge, how is this thing is big, that you know someone 10 years, and you're really, and I am really thankful, and I appreciate it that, thanks God, I met you, and just imagine how it's super, super.
Well, that thrills my heart. And, if you think about your podcast and the messages and the guests and what you share, how that ripple effect will continue to impact others. I always say you never know where your voice ends up and who you are going to impact. I also remember years ago getting an email from a listener over from Zimbabwe, and he had shared how his life had sort of changed. He'd made decisions on the guests that had, shared various insights and tips. And through that, he had made some significant decisions in his career. And he was now a program manager in one of the local radio stations in Zimbabwe. And, the Ambitious Entrepreneur Show, which is one of my podcasts, was then syndicated on that particular podcast as a podcast on their show. So you never know who you're going to impact, and how far
that's really true. Yeah. And I know from my I was a little bit shy, let's say 3-4 years ago, and my partner, we run our Facebook group, and she's my partner from Australia, and she said, Christina, why don't you pop up, and I've done 21-day challenge, social media management and digital marketing plan strategy, and in that time I created 15 videos talking on topic, and I hosted 4 guest speakers. And from there started in the name was From Entrepreneur Day, and because I've done 4 per month, and I've done rebranding KSM podcast, growing business online with Christina, and now people love that. And as you said, you need time to do it and monetize it, but always we have many opportunities to do it. But I really love what you do, and I'm super excited for this, just to have many amazing guest speakers. They share their stories. I've always chance to ask them, how did they start, challenges in their business, and other things, which is so great.
Amazing, isn't it? You learn so much from the people that you are able to interview on the podcasts, and that message is able then to impact all of the other people who are listening. It's an incredible feeling, for sure.
And every single podcast, every new episode is like that. Sometimes I felt that do it for first time, because depends of energy of guest speaker, and this is really fantastic, just to let you know, and for our listeners who will listen in this podcast today. And Annemarie, I wanted, and you started with podcasting, and I know that it was Ambitious Entrepreneur, and you also have the other one. I mean, it's about leadership. Can you tell us a little bit what topics did you cover in that? Because for listeners who didn't know about, but I was listening many times, but that's.
Yeah. Well, women in leadership, I'll tell you a little backstory about why I started that podcast, because it is, how we often have things in our life journey that it seems that it is an accident, but in actual fact, it's an intentional. And so this is something that I learned in the career industry. It's a bit of an oxymoron, but the phrase is planned happenstance. We know that happenstance often is something that just occurs out of the blue. But planned happenstance is when you realize that, there are a lot of different things that have happened that have gotten you to where that situation is today. So, and women in leadership, I think, is one of those occurrences, planned happenstance. It's an accident that completely catapulted my my business and direction in a brand new way, which is what I've continued to do. So, as I mentioned to you, after I left or we finished Career Success Radio, I continued to do podcasting. I had Ambitious Entrepreneur Show. I had Career Coaches Connection podcast as well. And during that time, we created a partnership. I created a partnership. It was a wonderful opportunity. We built a 7-figure pipeline. We had private clients. We had group coaching. We had membership. And it was really, all of the foundations had been built. But unfortunately, and I'm not going to go into what occurred, but that partnership fell through. And I was left thinking, my goodness, what am I going to do now? I'd put so much, my heart and soul, into that business. And I realized, looking back, that I was burnt out. I was going through a bit of depression. And I knew that I needed to take some time out. But I also knew that I needed to get back on that horse. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to interview other women. I knew I needed to do something, and I couldn't put two thoughts together. And I'm a content creator. I love creating content and programs and things, but I couldn't because I'd been burnt out. But I thought, I can ask great questions. So I thought, I'm going to go and surround myself with incredible women who have been through certain situations that I have, and I'm going to learn from them. So I started Women in Leadership podcast as a way to help me get over my grief and loss, and just help me to, surround with awesome women so that I can then decide, what do I want to do next? But an interesting accidental thing happened. 3 episodes in that were on my website, I got 2 4-figure clients. And this was a shock to me. And it wasn't until years later. Sometimes we don't recognize these gifts, these accidental gifts, till years later. And I remember thinking, what happened to have these 2 women, one was a doctor, one was in architecture, to come, not know who I was, do a Google search, look for a branding business coach, come to my website, listen to the 3 episodes, look around the website, and then decide, we want to work with Annemarie, ring me, and basically say, we want to work with you. Here's our issue. What's the best program, And I thought, could I do that again? So for years, I kind of mapped what they did. What did I need to have in place? And that's, of course, where Podcasting with Purpose was born. But it was that podcast that then completely had me change direction and really focus on podcasting, on branding, on positioning, so that you can position yourself as the coach versus just a coach. And it took that worst business failure ever, where I was really in a pit, really burned out. That particular, situation has turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, because it gave me the kick in the backside that I needed to really start focusing, really recognize what was unique, what was uncopyable about me, what is my life experience, my gifts, my talents. How can I put those all together in a way that provides incredible value to others who are, similar situations, or they're stuck as I was over those years, kind of thinking, how are we going to turn this around? And it was through those lessons that I've learned. And so that was Women in Leadership podcast. So we talk about, what did we learn? We talk about failure. We talk about what did we do differently, our insights, hindsight, foresight. We talk about all of those things, about just women getting together, sharing openly and honestly, and hoping that through their stories and journeys, we can help others who are struggling with similar things, bypass a lot of the mistakes that we've made over the years, so that they can achieve their goals far quicker. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I believe there's so many incredible gifts and talents that women have. We don't need to compete against one another. There is so much opportunity. And with tools such as, Zoom and other incredible tools, we can work arm in arm, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder with other women who are doing incredible things. We lift each other up. And what a wonderful opportunity that is, that we can do that. And so that's the kind of discussions we have on women in leadership.
And I really admire you, to be honest, because as a pioneer in podcasting, and listening to you 10 years ago, and how you grow and and thankful to your podcast and opening up my Australian path and everything. I met Samantha Johnson, and it was in that time, 2018, Project Global Women in Business. And I took part of that, and I'm thankful to that. And as you said, it was a gift in that time, in terms to meet Samantha as self-publishing. She has her self-publishing company. In 2019, I was called through with 7 amazing ladies from all around the globe. New Zealand, Australia, US, France, Serbia, and I'm super excited with this, but I wasn't there in promotion. But I promoted my book here in Belgrade, and such a great opportunities, and this is really awesome. And I translated this book in Serbian, and so that's nice. This is what I wanted to share, that we as women have to support each other either whenever we are in. And this is our opportunity in our energy, and how I can say that we have what we have, and we really need to support each other. As you said, you met some doctor and architecture, and you didn't know that, you never know who will listen, who will hear your voice. That's really
exactly
nice.
True. Exactly true. For women, and we've all go through that, don't we? We all go through times where we look at what we're doing and what we're saying. It's like, how can we position ourselves, amongst all of the other voices? So often what we do is we compare ourselves to what other people are doing. And in doing so, we neglect the wonderful gifts and talents that we have had in the way in which we share it. There are so many different aspects that is unique and uncopyable. Our story, at the blend of characteristics and your mannerisms. And so often we're trying to, and often the marketing space, I've heard a term said, the bro marketers, where it's all about dominating the marketplace and this and that. And it just feels, ugh. But as women, we don't operate that way. I mean, there's a far more of a compassionate, collaboration style about that. And not that we're better than anyone else. We are better placed to support our ideal clients because of the circumstances we've been through, because of our knowledge, because of our expertise. And when we look at it through that lens, that we're not saying we're better than everybody else, because everyone brings their unique style, all of that, and gifts and talents and expertise to the table, but we're just better placed to support our ideal clients. And when you think about the amount of people around the world, our ideal clients, and when we niche it down, there's a huge opportunity for every single one of us. And that's important, I think, just to remind ourselves, we're not competing. We're not better than anyone else. We're just better placed to support our ideal client. Figure out who that is, and then go be what you need to, share what you need to be able to be a support to him or her.
And we are all unique, and every single person in the world has got a story, and every story is so different. So that's a really huge, big opportunity to share it. And as we said, we never know who will hear our voice, who will hear our story, who will be impacted by our story and start business and much more, And for you as a pioneer, I know that you are one of the as a podcast strategist and personal brand coach. You're also one of the top 20 coaches in Melbourne, Australia. I must share that. And in terms of you're a podcast coach, and you coach people and entrepreneurs how to start podcasting. Can you share with us a little bit about it? And why podcast is important? Because people don't know to be visible. Why podcast is important, and a little bit about monetization. When you start, we said, and monetization, we need time to get into it and to, just to have target market, to have audience. But can you share us about our listeners, maybe for people who are struggling and wanted to start podcast, but don't have, just people are stuck to do it?
Yeah, great question. We could do a whole show on that one for sure. But let me just bullet point as much as I can. So one of the things that I recognized happened to me in my podcast, and remember, everything that I teach from the mistakes that I recognized I made, the things that weren't in place. And then as soon as I started changing things, that was when it really started to change for me. And that was that my message got lost in the noise of my own podcast. So what I mean by that is, for many years, I'd interviewed a lot of different people about different topics, about entrepreneurship, about building business. This is through the Ambitious Entrepreneur Show, which prior to the Entrepreneur Show was called Business Success Radio. Anyway, I recognized that there were a lot of diverse topics that were very interesting for people. That was why we were often listed in the top podcasts, listed, and was recognized. But I was thinking, with all of that, why am I just not generating and really cutting through for my message? And then I realized because it was so diverse, I had not niched my podcast in the area of branding, positioning as trusted authority, which is, of course, what I do now. And so, again, my message got lost in the noise of my own podcast. So then when Women in Leadership happened, and I had a look at, well, what was different? What was different was that the message that I had shared on my website, as well as the things that I was sharing in Women in Leadership, really spoke to the heart of what these women, these two ideal clients who then rang me and became clients, were struggling with. They were struggling with their messaging, with their branding, with their positioning, and they were very experienced in their industry, but they were struggling with their marketing. So what I did was I completely changed the kind of structure and framework of the podcast and really only spoke in certain areas that I knew my ideal client was interested in. Secondly, I know that many people think of monetizing podcasts by having sponsorships. And so I recognize that as experts, many of us are service-based businesses who have specialized areas and fields that we're sharing our knowledge and experience and coaching with our clients. Monetize our own message by creating a strategy and a tactic that gets people off your podcast and onto your list. And so what I did was created, using the three episode concept, create a 3-part episode which dives deeper into how you can support clients in areas that you know they are struggling with, and give them some insights, give them enough information that they can start to see why they're struggling, what they need to do. And you're then engaging with them because they're off your podcast now, on your list where they're consuming content. And it's like a promise of value and promise of expectation. They're getting incredible value. And the promise of expectation is, my goodness, if this is what it's like with this free episode series and masterclass that they put together, imagine what it's like to work with that person. So you're nurturing them along the buyer's journey. There's a whole teaching that I do on this, but I've got one client who's launching her podcast on Thursday. And she has created her 3-part series. And this is the first 3 episodes that's going to go live on her podcast, but it teaches them her ideal clients in an area that she's an expert in. She's a trusted authority already, but really educating and empowering potential clients in that area of expertise that she brings to the table. So she's starting to nurture. She's doing this whole podcast launch. She's sharing it. So as part of that, she's pulling people out of her community that are interested, and then beginning that whole nurturing process. So often we look at podcasts and we compare it to mainstream radio, which it's not. Yes, it's audio, but we are creating a community of highly niched, or this is what we want to do, highly niched audience of your ideal clients. And when you create content, that is really relevant to them, when you create this nurturing process, which is so important, getting someone from listener to lead and then paying client, when you have that in place, your podcast continues to be an incredible lead generation tool because you're adding value, you're really speaking to your ideal clients, and when they're ready, they'll move forward and get onto your list, and then you nurture them. So that's one of the main principles that I really teach my clients, is that you monetize your podcast through monetizing your message. You're creating leads for your business through your podcast. And that's around your branding, around your messaging, and around the strategy that you put into place. And then every single episode, has a call to action, that if this is something that they're interested in, come and get access to your podcast series masterclass, which again gets them off the podcast and onto your list. And then that continues to then build that relationship with that potential client. So monetize your own message before monetizing someone else's through sponsorships and advertising, which is what I've always said. So does that help kind of give you can really see that the whole structure of your podcast is going to be very different and intentional, purposeful, which is why I called the program, Podcasting with Purpose.
Good.
It really is a robust strategy that creates a community of ideal clients for your business.
That's really nice. And Annemarie, how listeners can find you through your website? I will put your information, AnnemarieCross.com.
Absolutely, AnnemarieCross.com. And if people are interested to see how this works out, what I've just explained, from getting people off the podcast and onto your list, I highly recommend that they go to podcastingwithpurpose.com/quiz. podcastingwithpurpose.com/quiz, because by accessing that, not only are they going to get valuable information if they're interested in launching a podcast or they have a podcast that they're not necessarily generating the results that they want, it's going to really help empower them getting clear on where the gaps are in their business. But they'll have the experience of what I've just shared, how to get people off the podcast onto the list and then nurture that relationship with them. So that's another link. It's a free gift that I would love to give people who are listeners to your podcast.
Yeah, that's nice. And so you encourage people who wanted to start, just start your podcast and go to Annemarie can help you a lot with it. So, and you can podcast, as you said, with this is nice what Annemarie share with you, just to go and to visit her website. And as you said, can you repeat again? Podcast with
the other link to the quiz is podcastingwithpurpose.com/quiz.
Oh, that's really nice. Annemarie, I'm super excited having you today. You share such amazing story. You just really give value to podcast, to this episode today, and I'm super excited having you as my special guest speaker. And this podcast is going to on Spotify, on Google app, on LinkedIn, Instagram, and in Facebook group KSM Marketing and Consulting Facebook group. So thank you so much for being my special guest speaker today. If I didn't ask you, do you have any final message for our listeners?
Just say to them, never doubt what you have to offer is not of value. It is. There is your ideal client is waiting for you to share your message. So go out and share it. And of course, thank you, Christina, for this opportunity to have this discussion with you today.
Thank you. I'm super excited, and I hope that I'll see you in some of new episodes. Thank you. It was such a great pleasure having you today.
Thank you.